And we continue our panel with Turkey's fight against FETO schools abroad. Nagehan, what are these schools really doing? How dangerous are they?
Well, last year I looked at the numbers. Maybe it's changed a little bit since then. Maybe dramatic change, I don't know. But last year the numbers were about 700 schools all around the world, and 250 of them were in Europe and the United States, and the rest in the other parts of the world. So Turkish government is strongly trying to convince different governments around the world that those schools are part of this terrorist organization. But it faces difficulties in convincing those governments. The biggest problem in front of this is that partly those schools are private schools. So some governments cannot intervene in private businesses. But some of the resistance stems from the resistance towards current Turkish politics, because many countries are actually denying the FETO truth. That's actually, I think, the biggest problem in front of Turkey's efforts. Those schools were actually elite schools. They, as we also saw now, they were having students from the most educated families in different countries. So they built a very wide network around the world, and they had close relationships with FETO elements in different countries as well. So actually their network is much more widespread than it's seen on paper. So the fight against those schools are very important. But of course, these schools are very important instruments in teaching Turkish culture, Turkish language, and they are very good schools in in different countries. So those schools can be transformed to forms of other schools which might be under control.
Yeah, but what kind of a threat these schools pose to their host countries? I mean, I can understand FETO did try to overthrow the government in Turkey, but what kind of a threat they pose in the host countries?
Well,
are they going to overthrow the government?
No. But
for example?
you know, they are promoting an ideology called Gülenism. Someone who is tried to be portrayed as a prophet, which is very dangerous. What they tried to do in Turkey was actually the first step. They wanted to go to all over the world to build a network and to conquer actually the most strategic points. Yeah. So they want to impose their own very dangerous ideology.
Vehbi, I mean, as we saw in the piece, I mean, these schools are just rebranded and new flags are just hoisted. Do you believe host countries fail to understand the intricacy of this organizational structure, or they just don't mind? What do you think?
Well, no, that's definitely both, because first, they don't see it as a threat. Second, these are prestigious schools, and we don't have a problem with them. They cannot constitute a threat, but that's what Turkey said in the past. So how come an education and such nice Muslims would cause such a trouble? But it happened. So I think they should take this 15 July failed coup attempt very seriously. I mean, it's like 3 years passed, and they're still struggling to comprehend. I mean, all these people died. It's not a joke. And many of them are really brutally. And nobody was able to stop this F-16 warplane opening fire on innocent civilians, unarmed. So all these things happen. So I think they have to learn and get experience from Turkey. Actually, this is a bad thing. You cannot have a good coup attempt or good military takeover or bad military takeover. I think they have double standards here, because in Egypt, excuse me, they have the same problem. They don't recognize Sisi's military takeover. I think this has to change in Europeans' mind, especially the world.
So, there's also this U.S. issue, which Turkey is quite disappointed because the United States refuses to extradite Fetullah-gulen. What do you make of that, Nagehan?
Well,
I mean, what would it take for the U.S. to extradite Fetullah-gulen, let's say?
Well, Fetullah-gulen is strong because of the backing of some actors and powers inside the U.S. system. That's obvious. That's how he got all this power, how he got the control mechanism situated in the heart of the United States. So those same actors, very same actors, still trying to give a protection for him. And it's, of course, somehow he is like a weapon inside the American system. So it's in there, well, from that perspective, to control different countries' internal affairs, Fetullah-gulen might be a good tool for them to just keep in hand.
And Laura, I want to talk about the ongoing operations in Turkey and how Turkey's fight against this terror organization is seen abroad. What would you say?
Well, it's well known that Turkey has been fighting different terror groups in the past years. Even before the coup attempt, Turkey was fighting at different fronts and had a lot of terrorist attacks in its soil during 2015 and 16. I think the European Union has showed solidarity in this regard and has always supported the democratic institutions in Turkey and has supported Turkey in taking action against those serious threats. At the same time, though, there's a concern about the measures being taken after these attacks and the proportion and the nature of the measures. But there's a strong counterterrorism dialogue going on between the EU and Turkey, and these issues are discussed because also the terror threats posed to Turkey are a threat to the EU and Europe as a whole. So in that sense, there's a strong interest to continue having a discussion and overcoming these threats.
All right, Laura, thank you for joining us from Brussels, and I'm afraid we have to leave it here. I would like to thank you, Nagehan and Vehbi, for joining me on Straight Talk. Appreciate it a lot.